All right, so this is going to be a face rating, and I do want to shout out somebody. He goes by the name of Creating Attractiveness, and he also does facial analysis, facial harmony in particular, and he has a very good rating system with 46 different mathematical measurements. And the one thing that I like about his metric is that he uses a lot of measurements that are scientifically proven, and the fact that it's purely measurements, right? So purely numbers, not looking at the person's face and saying, okay, this guy has this wrong, this guy has a receded chin, or a sharp jawline or something like that. No, no, these are just purely measurements. The measurements are telling you how attractive they are. All you got to do is just measure it, calculate it, and put it within this particular formula, and you'll get how attractive the person's face is by their facial harmony. So another thing with facial harmony is you don't need the most robust face to get the best harmony. All our facial harmony is how well your the features in your face go together, how well they go together. So yeah, and this is a facial analysis for Mr. Locario. I know he's a red pill YouTuber, so I know some of y'all guys wanted to know how attractive he is. So I'm gonna get straight to the point, right? So his overall rating is a 5.6. I'm gonna break it down to y'all. And how rare is that? That's 1 in 3 people. So he's 1 in 3, right? So that's around the 30 percentile, which is very good. His side facial score is 58%, and his front facial score is 49.5%. So his side facial score is more harmonious than his front facial score. All right. Now let's go through the tier list, because I know some of y'all might not know what a tier list is. So tier one means ideal. So that measurement in particular is good. Tier two means near ideal. Tier three is normal. Tier four is a flaw, a slight flaw, I mean. And tier five is a flaw. Tier six is a huge flaw, and tier seven is breaks harmony. So these are the tier list. And another thing too is you want to get as many tier ones as possible, or tier twos, but anything below a tier four will pretty much kind of break your harmony in within some degree. So yeah, and this is the rarity scores of celebrities. So I know some of y'all guys are seeing some of y'all favorite celebrities right here. And just to give y'all a good idea, and like I said again, this is from Creative Attractiveness. He pretty much had a whole metric system for this, and I just pretty much put it onto here so y'all guys can see it. Justin Bieber, Chris Hemsworth, Jeremy Meeks, Matt Bomber, Jay Z, Lil Wayne, a whole bunch of people that y'all see. And if you're below a 5 in facial attractiveness, as y'all guys can see, like let's say for example, Lil Wayne is 1 in 2.6, right? So that means 1 out of 2.6 people are going to be better looking than him. That's pretty much what it means. It's going the other way around. So just to give y'all that kind of idea, once it's under a 5. All right, so let's get to it. So eye spacing ratio is the ratio between your pupils of your eyes to the cheekbones, or the zygomatic, and his is 44%, which is on the lower end. So that will be a tier two. But like I said, tier two is slightly, well, near ideal. So it's not bad. It's close to the ideal, but it's not ideal, but it's close to. It's very close. His facial thirds are pretty good. You want your lower third to be the most dominant, which is 35%, as y'all guys can see it, and his top and middle is. And I gave him a tier one for the facial thirds because they're very proportional. All right, for canful tilt, his canful tilt is 2 degrees, which is not ideal, but it's still better than average. So he still gets some points for that. His facial width to height. So how long is his mid face to the height and width of it, which is 2, and that's perfectly ideal. So his facial width to height is good, and it goes from the top of the upper lip all the way to the bottom of the brow ridge and to cheekbones for the width. Now his frontal jaw angle is not ideal. It's too low of an angle, which means that it's a bit too steep and is not big enough. His jaw is not big enough. It's not wide enough for especially for his face. So what that means is that he's gonna get a tier 4. Cheekbones, high settingness, how high his cheekbones are in relation to his face, and it's 78 percent, which is very good. But he still gets a tier 2 because it can be a little bit higher, but still that's still very harmonious. Bigonial width, how wide is his jaw compared to his cheekbones, and it is 80%, which is not bad, but it can be much wider, which he gets a tier 3 for. Total facial height to width ratio. How long is his face? Pretty much that's what it really means, to the width of his face from cheekbone to cheekbones to the top of his hairline all the way to the bottom of his chin, and it's 1.43, and that's a tier 2 flaw. Actually, it's not really a flaw. It's near ideal actually, because the ideal is 1.38, so it's pretty close to it. So yeah, he gets tier 2 for that. Tier 1 for philtrum to chin ratio. His philtrum to chin ratio is 2.5, which is in the ideal range, which is good. His neck width is not ideal. It's too skinny, 78%, which is not ideal. Mouth to nose ratio is not ideal. His nose is too wide for his lips. Pretty much, if his lips were a bit wider, it will be harmonious. But for that reason, it was not ideal because his lips is not that wide enough. His mid face ratio is pretty much supposed to be a square, so close to 1, and 0.96 is very close to 1. So that is a tier 1. Tier 5 means this is a flaw, and it is how high his eyebrows are, and his eyebrows are very high up, as you can see. And this is eye spacing, one width eyes apart. So literally one width of your eye is supposed to be in between, and that's not it. Is his eyes are pretty much too close together. So that's why he got a tier 5, which is a flaw. Tier 4 for the eye aspect ratio. His eyes are a bit too rounded. Even though he's squinting in these photos, his eyes are still a bit too rounded. Um, Lower lip to upper lip ratio. His upper lip and lower lip are 1 to 1, which is not within the ideal. Your lower lip is actually supposed to be much wider than your upper lip. Tier 3, which is not bad, is normal. Is his deviation between his ipsilateral alar angle, which I'm going to explain later, and his jaw frontal angle, which already stated that it was around 77 to 78 degrees, and is not supposed to deviate more than, I think, like 5% if you want to get a tier 1, but his deviate more than 14%. So it's still within the normal range, but it's not within the ideal range. That's why you got a tier 3 for that. Tier 1 is his eyebrow tilt, which is good. Um, Bitemporal width, the width of the forehead compared to the cheekbones, which is 86%, which is very good. That's tier 1. Tier 2 for the lower thirds within proportion, so it's supposed to be close to 33%. For the philtrum, or I should say the bottom of the nose all the way to the middle of the lip, is supposed to be within the 33%. And if it's greater than, 4% away from 33%, which is 37 for him, is going to be a tier 2 flaw, which is near ideal. So it's closer to the ideal. All right, so ipsilateral angle, like I said, I'm going to explain it to y'all. So it pretty much explains the angle between the bottom of the nose all the way to the left and right side of the edges of the eyes, of the outer outside of the eyes, and pretty much it determines how wide set your eyes are too. And his is not too wide set at about 92%, which is tier one. All right, I'm gonna go through this real quick. So gonial angle, we should know what that is. That's the angle of the ramus and the mandible, which is the jaw, which is tier one, which is good, 120 degrees. Nasal frontal angle pretty much determines how protrusive is the brow ridge compared to your nose, and his is good at 115, which is tier one. Mandibular plane angle, how steep is the mandible? You don't want a very steep mandible or down swung jaw. His is not down swung. That's why he gets a tier one. Tier three, his ramus is not long enough at 48% of the mandible itself. So that is a tier three flaw. Facial convexity, his and this is one of his biggest flaws in general. His face is too round. His facial convexity is too rounded. So you get this facial convexity going from the glabella all the way down to the chin and the midpoint of his maxilla. All right, and then submental uh, cervical angle. So from the neck all the way down to the jaw, and that's 103, and that's really good. You want to get closer to or kind of like around a right angle. Nasofacial angle is good, and it's around 28 degrees. So how harmonious is his chin? To actually, it's not good. It's normal. My fault. How harmonious is his chin related to his nose? So that's 28 degrees. This one is not ideal at all. This is a huge flaw, which is 49 degrees. It determines how droopy is his nose, which his nose is kind of droopy, and he has a lot of upper lip protrusion as well. Orbital vector, how much is his eyes protruding? And he gets a tier three. He does kind of have like sort of like a neutral orbital vector, which is not good, but it's not bad, but it can be better. Total facial convexity, like I said, is 140 degrees for him. His face is just it's too rounded. But for this, since he has a lot of nasal protrusion, his total facial convexity still was in the ideal range just because he has a lot of nasal protrusion, as I'm going to explain later. Mental label angle, I have trouble saying it. It's good. It's pretty much how harmonious is his bottom lip to his chin, which is 116 degrees. This one is a big flaw, facial convexity from the nasion. So instead of the glabella, we're doing it from the nasion as well, and it's 158 degrees. Like I said, his facial convexity is just too rounded. Um, Nasal protrusion is very, very good at 0.58, especially for African American. This is very, very good. And then this is nasal height to width ratio, and his is still good at 0.82. Like I said, for African American, this is very rare. Ricketts E-line. So from the tip of the nose down to the chin, it's trying to see how harmonious is his nose, lips, and chin. And it's a way to see how protruded your lips are. This is pretty much how protruded your lips are, which is not ideal. Um, Holloway H line. So this is the H line from the upper lip down to the chin. This is not ideal. Steiner S line from the midpoint down to the chin. This is not ideal as well. And his Bristol line is not ideal as well. Nasal mental angle, 119 degrees. So is not ideal, but it can be better, but it's within the normal range. As I said, his nasal protrusion is helping a lot, especially for his very rounded facial convexity. So gonial to mouth relationship, his gonial to mouth relationship is closer to his mouth line. So that would be a tier two, which is not a flaw, but is near ideal. But it can be better if it would undercut his mouth completely. Recession relative to the Frankfurt plane. So how recessed is his jaw? His jaw is not recessed, as y'all guys can see. The line clearly passes the nasion and the glabella, which is the brow ridge. The brow ridge inclination is not ideal, as you guys can see. His brow ridge is not inclinated back. So how inclined his forehead is not ideal, but it's still within the normal range. So it's not going to look too bad. Nasal tip angle, and this is the last measurement. Nasal tip angle is not ideal. His nose is too rounded towards the top, and this